Logan Steele hadn't meant to be out that late with his daughter, but when a fever hit her babysitter last minute, he had no choice but to bring Riley with him to his night shift at the mechanic shop across town. Now it was nearly midnight, and he was carrying his sleeping 6-year-old in his arms, her curly hair tucked under his jacket, while his boots hit the cracked sidewalk with tired, heavy steps. "Excuse me," a woman's voice called from behind. Logan turned, adjusting Riley against his chest. A woman in heels and a sleek black coat stood a few feet away, her voice calm but cautious. Her long dark hair was swept over one shoulder, and her eyes sharp, alert, watched him carefully. "Hey," she said, still keeping her distance. "Would you mind walking with me? My Uber canceled, and I don't feel safe walking alone." He blinked. She didn't look like the kind of woman who asked strangers for help. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, not on a dark street downtown. Sure. I guess I'm heading that way anyway." "Thanks," she said, stepping closer. "I'm Jules." He nodded once. "Logan, and this is Riley. She's out cold." Jules glanced down at the little girl bundled in his coat and smiled warmly. "She's beautiful." "Thanks." "She's my whole world." They walked side by side, streetlights casting long shadows. Jules kept glancing at him like she was trying to figure him out. "You always walk around this late?" she asked. He gave a half laugh. "Only when life throws a wrench in the plan. My babysitter bailed. I had to pick up a night shift at the garage." "You work at a garage?" "Yeah, fix cars, whatever keeps the lights on." She looked down, thoughtful. "That's admirable." He raised an eyebrow. "Fixing cars?" "No, doing what it takes, being there for your daughter." Most people would have canceled their shift, he shrugged, not used to praise. "Can't afford to." Jules nodded slowly. "Must be tough, we manage." She looked ahead again. "You seem like a good dad." Logan didn't know what to say to that. Compliments weren't something he heard often. Not lately anyway. They reached the main road where the lights of a hotel glowed a few blocks away. "I'm staying there," Jules said, pointing. "I travel a lot for work." "What do you do?" he asked. She hesitated. "I run a company, tech stuff." He nodded, not pressing. He didn't know much about tech besides resetting his phone. "Sounds important, it can be, but it's lonely sometimes." That surprised him. A woman like her, lonely. They stopped at the hotel's entrance. Jules looked up at him and then at Riley. "Thank you," she said quietly. "No problem," she lingered. "Can I get you a coffee sometime as a thank you?" He shook his head. "I don't need anything." "I know, but I want to." Logan hesitated. She was out of his league, way out. But something in her eyes didn't feel fake. She wasn't being polite, she meant it. "All right," he said slowly. "One coffee." She smiled, then reached into her purse and handed him a plain business card, just a name, Jules Fairmont, and a number. He looked down at it, then back at her. "Fairmont, like the Fairmont Group," her lips twitched. "Yeah. That's me." Logan nearly dropped the card. "You're the CEO of Fairmont Tech." "Guilty." He stared at her. You're worth billions," she laughed. "Don't say it like that." He looked at his worn boots, Riley's scuffed sneakers swinging from under his jacket. "I'm not really your type." "You don't know what my type is." He met her gaze, and for a moment neither of them said anything. "Call me," she said, stepping back toward the doors. "Seriously." Logan watched her go, stunned. The next morning, Logan sat on the couch, staring at the card like it might disappear. Riley was eating cereal on the floor, humming to herself. "You look weird, Daddy," she said with a mouth full of marshmallows. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, baby, I feel weird." He didn't call her that day. Or the next one after that. But on the fourth day, Riley looked up from her coloring book and said, "Are you ever going to call that pretty lady?" Logan sighed. "You think I should?" She made you smile. "You don't do that a lot." That night, he called her. They met at a small cafe on the edge of the city. Logan wore his cleanest flannel. Jules wore a soft sweater and no makeup. "I didn't think you'd actually call," she said, stirring her tea. "I didn't think I would either." They talked for hours, about Riley, about her company. About why she worked so much, why he worked so hard, about what it meant to be exhausted and still keep going. "You don't intimidate me," she said finally. "You should," he said. "I got nothing to offer you." "That's not true," he looked at her. "Name one thing. You walked me home. You didn't ask for anything. You're kind, and you love your daughter more than anything." He swallowed hard. "That's not enough for someone like you." She leaned forward. "It's more than I've ever had." The next time they met, she brought Riley a stuffed bunny. When Logan tried to protest, Jules cut him off. "It's not charity, it's a gift. Let me spoil her a little." Riley loved the bunny. She named it Sparkle. She made Jules sit on the floor and play tea party with her. Watching them, something tightened in Logan's chest. It scared him how easy it was. How natural Jules was around his daughter. How good it felt to have her near, but he didn't say anything. Not yet. One night after dinner, Jules pulled him aside. "I want to take you both somewhere," she said. "Just for the weekend. We can't afford that. I didn't ask you to pay. Still, Logan," her voice was gentle, "let me do this for you, for her." He looked at her. "Why?" She paused, then said softly, "Because I care about you." He didn't answer. But that night, he lay awake holding Riley, thinking about the way Jules had looked at him. Like he mattered, like he belonged. And for the first time in years, he let himself hope. The air was warmer than usual for spring. Logan kept adjusting the strap of his duffel bag as he stood near the curb, Riley perched on his hip, her small backpack bouncing against his side. Jules' car, a sleek silver coupe that looked better suited for a red carpet than their neighborhood, pulled up with a quiet purr. She stepped out wearing flats and jeans, her hair pulled back. "Hey," she said, offering Riley a gentle wave. Logan shifted. "You sure about this?" "I wouldn't have come if I wasn't." Riley leaned toward her. "Do you really have a swimming pool in your house?" Jules leaned in conspiratorially. "Two, but the outdoor one is heated." Logan raised an eyebrow. "That's absurd," she grinned. "You'll see." As they drove, Riley dozed in the backseat and Jules kept her eyes on the road, one hand loose on the wheel. "You didn't have to come all the way to pick us up," Logan said eventually. "I wanted to. I figured it'd be easier." He glanced at her profile, the way she focused on the road like she was trying not to say too much. "You don't do this often, do you? Pick up men and their daughters from low-income neighborhoods?" "No, Logan." "This is new territory." He laughed under his breath. "You're bold." "I figured you knew that by now. The house wasn't just a house. It was a glass and stone estate tucked behind a private gate with a winding drive that opened to a view of the ocean." Riley gasped as Logan lifted her out of the car. He didn't say anything, but his jaw tightened slightly as he took in the size of it. Jules led them inside. The foyer alone was bigger than Logan's entire apartment. Riley ran ahead, her backpack bouncing as she explored, while Logan hung back near the entryway, his hands shoved into his jacket pockets. "You all right?" Jules asked. He glanced around. "I feel like I'm trespassing." "You're not. You're invited." "I don't belong here." She stepped closer. "I didn't bring you here because I thought you belonged to this world. I brought you because I wanted you in it." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached down to undo Riley's backpack strap that had come loose. "You ever think maybe I'm not the kind of man you're supposed to want?" "Yes," she said simply. "And I stopped caring about supposed to a long time ago." That night, Jules ordered dinner from a private chef who came and went with practiced quiet. Riley devoured her pasta while Jules convinced her to try tiramisu. Logan only picked at his food, too distracted by the way his daughter lit up every time Jules spoke to her. After Riley fell asleep in one of the guest rooms, something she did quickly, buried under a pile of soft blankets, Logan stepped out onto the patio. The ocean breeze rolled in over the cliffs, and lights from ships blinked far off on the horizon. Jules joined him with 2 glasses of wine. "She's incredible," she said, handing him one. "She is. I'm glad you brought her." "She wouldn't let me come without her." Jules leaned against the railing. "I didn't grow up with much time for people, never had siblings. My parents were more interested in boardrooms than birthdays." He tilted his head. "Why'd you tell me that?" "Because I don't know how to do this. And I figured you should know I'm not some polished fantasy. I work too much. I forget to eat. I get restless when things slow down." He looked her over. "But you're trying." "Yes." They stood in silence for a moment before he said, "I've never met anyone like you." "Is that a compliment or a warning?" "Little of both." She laughed softly, then turned to face him fully. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Do you ever let people take care of you?" He didn't answer right away. "I don't have time for that." "What if someone made time?" He looked down at the wine in his hand. "What if it didn't last?" "Then it doesn't." "But maybe it's something worth risking." Inside, Riley stirred and called out softly. Logan set the glass down and went to her without hesitation. Jules stayed on the patio, watching the moonlight ripple across the water. The next morning, Jules came downstairs to find Logan in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, flipping pancakes while Riley sat cross-legged on the marble counter. "You're not supposed to cook," she said, amused. "You don't have any cereal," he said without turning. "I didn't think to stock for a 6-year-old. Well, she wanted pancakes, figured I'd make myself useful." Jules perched on a stool, watching as Logan handed Riley a plate. "You ever think about doing this for yourself?" he frowned. "What do you mean, your own garage?" "Your own business," he shook his head. "Takes money, connections, I've got neither." "What if you had a partner?" He looked over at her. "You offering? I'm considering it." He studied her for a moment. "Why? Because I believe in you." He turned back to the stove. "You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not. But I've watched you solve problems without hesitation. You don't complain, you don't quit. That's rare." Later that day, Jules took Riley down to the beach just below her property. Logan watched from the deck as they collected shells and dipped their feet into the water. Jules carried Riley when the tide rose unexpectedly, laughing the whole time. When they returned, Riley was soaked and beaming. "She runs fast," she declared, pointing at Jules. "I had to," Jules said, brushing sand from her legs. "You're heavy. Am not. Are too." Logan watched them, something tender flickering behind his eyes. He hadn't seen Riley that full of joy in a long time. That night, Logan stayed up after Jules went to bed, sitting in the quiet living room, surrounded by a world that didn't belong to him. But Jules had opened it to him anyway. And for the first time, he wasn't just wondering what it would feel like to step into that world. He was wondering what it would feel like to stay. Logan adjusted the collar of the button-down Jules had ordered for him. He tried to say no, but it had magically appeared in the guest room closet, tags removed, ironed, and hanging beside a matching navy blazer. She'd said they were going to a dinner that evening, just a small gathering at her friend's home, but judging by the sleek car that picked them up, and the way Jules now looked beside him in a champagne silk blouse and tailored pants, it was anything but small. They pulled into a gated estate surrounded by manicured hedges and glowing lanterns. Logan stepped out and paused, looking at the marble staircase leading up to the entrance. "You all right?" Jules asked, her voice quieter than usual. "I've never been anywhere with valet parking that didn't also serve burgers in paper bags," he said. She laughed softly. "You'll be fine. Just be yourself. That's the part I'm worried about." Inside, the house was filled with low jazz crystal glasses and people who greeted Jules with deference. A tall man in a gray suit approached them with a practiced smile. "Juliana," he said, taking her hand, "you're actually early." "That's a first." Logan's brows rose. "Juliana," Jules gave him a sheepish glance. "My full name, I don't use it much." "Logan," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm Marcus. Host, occasional chef, and long-suffering friend of this one." Logan shook his hand, catching the glint of a platinum watch peeking from Marcus's cuff. "Nice place," Marcus grinned. "It's livable, I suppose." As they moved through the room, Logan noticed the way people looked at Jules, not just with recognition, but with reverence. She was clearly more than just successful. She was a force. A woman in a striking black jumpsuit approached with a flute of champagne. "Juliana, you didn't tell us you were bringing someone," Jules smiled. "This is Logan." The woman's gaze flicked over him with clinical interest. "And what do you do, Logan?" "I fix engines." There was a pause, then a small, surprised nod. "How refreshing." As the woman walked away, Logan muttered, "She meant that in the most condescending way possible." "She did," Jules said, "but don't let her ruin your night." He followed her onto the balcony where the city glittered below. The night air was cooler there and quieter. "I don't fit in here," he said. "You're not supposed to." "Then why bring me?" "Because I wanted you to see this part of my life, not the press releases or the numbers, the reality, the pressure, the people." He leaned against the railing. "And you still want me near it." "I want you near me." He looked at her. "That's a risk. I'm used to risk." He was about to say something when Jules's phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression shifting. "What is it?" "That was my assistant. Something just happened with a board member. He leaked internal data. Serious? Potentially. I might need to fly out tomorrow." Logan nodded slowly. "Of course, do what you need to." I hate this part, she said, finally pocketing the phone. I hate that no matter what's happening in my life, the company always finds a way to wedge itself in. You built something massive. It comes with weight. She looked at him, her eyes searching. And what if that weight pulls me too far from what matters? Then you hold onto what keeps you grounded. She stepped closer, her voice lower now. You do that for me, you know. Logan didn't respond, not with words. He leaned in and for the first time kissed her slow and certain, like a man who'd been holding back for far too long. When they parted, she whispered, I've wanted that since the night you walked me home. I didn't think I was allowed. You are. Always. The next morning, Logan made breakfast. Not because she asked, but because the kitchen was quiet and Riley was still sleeping, curled up in the guest bed with Sparkle tucked under one arm. Jules came in barefoot, her phone pressed to her ear. She mouthed an apology, grabbed a mug, and disappeared onto the patio. He watched her pace the length of it, voice calm but firm. This wasn't the woman who'd sat on the floor playing Tea Party. This was the CEO, the leader. When she finally came back in, she looked tired. Crisis? Logan asked, handing her a plate. Managed, for now. You always look like you're carrying 3 different storms in your head. That's because I am. Then maybe you need someone to share the umbrella. She blinked, then smiled. That might be the most poetic thing I've heard you say. Don't get used to it. Later that day, Jules sat beside Riley in the garden while Logan watched from a distance, his phone buzzing in his pocket. He pulled it out and stared at the screen. A message from the owner of the garage where he worked. Need to cut hours. Sorry, man. He slipped the phone back in and turned toward the house. Inside, Jules was reviewing documents on her laptop. She looked up as he entered. I just lost half my hours, he said, her expression tightened. Logan, don't. I'm not asking for anything. You should be. I've made it this far without handouts. I'll figure it out. She closed the laptop. What if it wasn't a handout? What if it was a partnership? You don't even know if I'm worth investing in. I know you'd never take advantage. That's worth more than most resumes, he exhaled slowly. Jules, I can't be some project you're fixing. You're not. You're someone I admire, someone I want in my life. He looked at her, really looked. You're serious. I've never been more. He stepped closer. Then I need to tell you something. She waited. I'm scared of losing myself in this, of becoming someone who forgets where he came from. Then don't forget, keep your roots. Just don't let them stop you from growing. For a long moment, they stood in the quiet, the weight of everything between them both comforting and terrifying. Finally, he nodded. All right. Let's see how far this thing can go. Jules reached for his hand. Together, Riley burst in seconds later, Sparkle under one arm and a bright grin on her face. Can we go to the park now? Jules looked at Logan. You up for it? He squeezed her hand. Yeah, let's go. As they headed out, Logan didn't feel like a guest anymore. He felt like part of something. Something real. Logan watched his reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls as it rose steadily toward the top floor of the Fairmont Tech headquarters. He adjusted the sleeves of his dark jacket, the fabric stiffer than what he was used to. The building was silent at this hour, the kind of calm that came when most employees had gone home and only the weight of power lingered in the halls. Jules had asked him to meet her here. Not at her estate, not at the cafe, not even at the park where Riley liked to chase pigeons. Here. Where she ruled. The doors opened with a soft chime. She stood across the room, her back to him, looking out at the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her hair was up, her heels were off, and there was an untouched whiskey glass on her desk. He stepped inside. You called, she turned, and he caught something raw in her expression. Not fear, not regret, something deeper, vulnerability sharp and unguarded. I lost a contract today, she said, her voice steady. One we've been chasing for nearly a year. I'm sorry. I'm not, she said, surprising him. It made me realize something. I've been chasing the wrong things. He crossed the room slowly. You sure this is where you want to have this conversation? Absolutely. She walked around her desk and leaned against it, arms crossed loosely. I've spent years building something that looks perfect on the outside, but lately I've started to wonder if it's just a very expensive distraction. From what? From how empty it feels when I go home at night. Logan didn't speak. He let the silence settle between them. I want more than this, she said quietly. And I'm not talking about business. I want the mess. The mornings with cereal on the floor, the arguments about who left the milk out, the laughter I hear when Riley's near you. I want what's real." He walked closer but didn't touch her. "You're not used to letting people in." "No, but I want to learn. You're not the only one." She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "It hasn't been long, I know that, but I know how I feel. So do I." A flicker of relief crossed her face like she'd been bracing for rejection. He took her hand. "You're not asking too much." "I don't want to lose what we've started," she said, "but I don't want to keep it hidden either. I want to live it, fully." Logan nodded. "Then let's stop pretending like this is temporary." She stepped into his arms without hesitation, her forehead resting against his collarbone. Later that evening, they returned home, Jules's home, but it didn't feel like just hers anymore. Riley was on the couch with a sitter, both of them watching a movie. She looked up and grinned. "Daddy, you're back." Logan scooped her up easily. "Always." Jules sat beside them, curling her legs under her. Riley leaned her head on Jules's shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Can we have pancakes for dinner again?" Riley asked. Logan raised an eyebrow. "You just had them yesterday." "But Jules makes the syrup warm." Jules raised a hand. "Guilty," he laughed. "Fine. Pancakes it is." That night, after Riley had fallen asleep with books scattered around her bed, Logan stepped onto the balcony where Jules was sitting with a blanket over her knees and a tablet in hand. "They offered me a feature in Forbes again," she said, without looking up. "You gonna say yes?" "Maybe. But this time I want them to include the truth, not just the photo of me in the boardroom. I want them to see the full version." He leaned on the railing. "What's the full version?" A woman who fell for a man carrying his daughter home after a long shift. Who realized that love doesn't come in press releases or profit margins. He was quiet for a long moment. "You really mean that?" "I do." He stepped closer. "Then marry me," she blinked. "What?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, not one from a velvet box or a high-end jeweler. This one was simple, a thin band with a small stone that had belonged to his mother. He held it out without ceremony, without a practiced speech. "I don't have a jet, or a yacht, or anything that makes the world stare, but I've got this, and I've got Riley, and we both love you. So if you want us, really want us, then say yes." Jules stared at the ring, her throat working. "You're serious," she whispered. "I've never been more." She took the ring with trembling fingers. "I want all of it. The good, the hard, the slow mornings, and the messy nights. I want you. Both of you." He slid the ring onto her finger, then he kissed her, not just with passion, but with promise. Months later, the wedding was held in the garden behind her estate, not a massive affair. Just a few close friends, Riley tossing flower petals with more enthusiasm than aim, and Jules laughing in a way Logan had never heard before, completely free. She wore a soft ivory dress, barefoot in the grass, and Logan met her halfway down the aisle, lifting Riley in one arm and taking Jules's hand with the other. Marcus officiated, somehow managing to keep a straight face while Riley interrupted twice to tell him he was talking too slowly. When the vows were done and the kiss sealed their future, Logan looked at Jules and said only one thing: "We're home now." And for the first time in his life, he truly was. The evening sun spilled golden light across the terrace as soft music drifted from the open French doors behind them. Logan adjusted Riley's cardigan, buttoning the top where she'd missed it, his fingers careful around the glittery star sewn near the collar. She was sitting on a cushioned bench, swinging her legs and humming quietly, her curls bouncing with each motion. "She's going to get dirt all over that dress," Jules said from the doorway, holding 2 glasses of lemonade. "She's 6, Logan replied as he took one of the glasses. "Clean clothes are a myth." Jules laughed, a low sound that came easily now. "I just didn't expect her to fall in love with gardening the same week I hired a full landscaping team. She told me she wants to grow strawberries and make her own jam." "Well," Jules said, sitting beside him, "I guess Fairmont Enterprises will have to make room for a jam division." Logan leaned back against the bench, their shoulders brushing. "She's happy here." "I know." Jules looked out at the yard, where Riley had planted a crooked row of wildflowers next to a perfectly manicured hedge. "So am I." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink lower. The world felt slower now, less about rushing toward something and more about settling into what they'd found. I got the papers today, she said finally. He looked at her. Papers? For the new garage space, the one in Westbrook. Logan sat up straighter. You got it, she nodded. It'll need some work, but it's got 5 bays, a clean office, and a storage loft, and it's yours, fully. He blinked, stunned. You bought me a garage. No, you bought a garage. I just helped with the paperwork and maybe the negotiating. He stared at her, words failing for a moment. You didn't have to do that, I know, but I wanted to, because I believe in what you're building. He set his glass down. You sure you want to tie yourself to a grease monkey with a kid and a stubborn streak? Absolutely. She turned toward him, her tone soft but certain. You make me better, Logan, not because you fix problems, but because you see through the noise. I don't want to be something you lean on when things go sideways. You're not. You're the reason I finally stopped running in circles. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. Then let's build something that lasts. They kissed, slow and sure, while Riley danced barefoot through the grass in the distance, her laughter ringing across the yard. Weeks passed, and the garage opened with little fanfare but plenty of pride. Logan kept the old signage from his first job and hung it above the new entrance like a tribute. He hired 2 mechanics he'd worked with before, guys who still wore oil under their nails and didn't care about prestige. Jules visited often during the first few weeks, dressed down in jeans and sunglasses, bringing iced coffee or lunch for the crew. She never stayed long, just enough to remind him she was in his corner. One afternoon, she walked in holding a clipboard. I have a proposition, she said, setting it in front of him. Logan wiped his hands on a towel and raised an eyebrow. If this is another expansion pitch, I'm not ready for it. It's not. It's a name change. He glanced at the paper. At the top, in bold lettering, it read, Steel and Fairmont Automotive. He stared at it. You serious? I figured since I helped secure the building, I could at least sneak my name on the sign. He smirked. You just want a reserved parking spot. Obviously. He stepped around the counter and pulled her into his arms, resting his forehead against hers. You're impossible, and you love me for it. Yeah, he said, brushing his lips against hers. I really do. That night, they celebrated with grilled steaks in the backyard. Riley wore an apron covered in handprints and helped flip vegetables with serious concentration while Jules read off recipe instructions like she was hosting a cooking show. After dinner, Logan carried Riley upstairs and tucked her in. She clutched Sparkle against her chest, her eyes already half closed. Daddy. Yeah, Bug, are we gonna stay here forever? He smoothed her hair back. You want that? She nodded sleepily. You and Jules and me. It's the best team. He kissed her forehead. Then yeah, we're staying. Downstairs, Jules had dimmed the lights and lit candles across the patio table. The night was warm, the sky clear. He joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist. She asked if we're staying, he said. What did you tell her? That we're not going anywhere. Jules leaned her head against his shoulder. Good answer. They sat under the stars until the candles burned low, speaking softly about the future plans for a family trip, the next phase of the business, and what to do with the spare room upstairs. Months later, Jules stood in that spare room, running her hand over the windowsill while Logan painted the opposite wall a pale, calming blue. You think it's too early? She asked. He shook his head. It's never too early to prepare. She smiled, resting a hand over her stomach, the smallest curve just starting to show. Riley wants to name the baby Pancake. Logan laughed. Well, we did meet over breakfast. She said it's a lucky name. He dropped the brush and crossed the room, placing his palm over hers. Then maybe Pancake it is for now. They kissed, slow and grateful, in the quiet of the nursery. A year passed. The garage flourished. Riley started piano lessons, and Jules stepped back from the day-to-day of her company to focus on consulting and passion projects. Their wedding photo hung in the hallway, Riley's slightly crooked flower crown still visible in the frame. One evening, Jules stood in the kitchen barefoot, holding their infant son while Riley practiced chords in the living room. Logan entered through the back door, dusted in sawdust from building a treehouse in the yard. He looked at her surrounded by everything they'd built and smiled. What? She asked. Just thinking, he said, taking the baby from her arms. This is the life I didn't know I was allowed to want. She brushed his cheek with her knuckles. And now that you have it, I'm never letting it go." They kissed, and the baby gurgled between them, Riley's piano notes floating through the air like a soundtrack to something real, something earned. And together, they lived each day not for perfection, but for the beautiful, imperfect, extraordinary life they'd chosen.